Good evening and welcome to Climate Conscious Chats, a co-production of the City of West Palm Beach Office of Sustainability and the University of Florida's Thompson Earth Systems Institute. I'm Elaine with the City of West Palm Beach, and with me tonight is Brian, Stephanie, and Elise from the Thompson Earth Systems Institute. We're excited to bring you tonight's chat on food production. We've left some links in the chat box for you this evening and encourage you to take a look. As we get started, we ask that you send us your questions throughout the program tonight using the chat box feature. Tonight's Climate Conscious Chat brings you Germán Sandoya Miranda of the University of Florida's IFAS Everglades Research Education Center in Belle Glade, Florida. Dr. Sandoya Miranda is an assistant professor in the Breeding and Genetics Research Program, and today he is going to talk about our changing climate and its effects on vegetable production, and lettuce in particular. Dr. Sandoya Miranda, please take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Brian, Elaine, Elise, and Stephanie for inviting me today to talk about food production in this climate changes time. So I'm going to share my screen now. I hope you can see it. We're going to start. So I name my presentations so many challenges, so little time, especially in climate change. And I work for the University of Florida. I'm located at the Everglades Research and Education Center. What I do is to improve lettuce for Florida production. So it's important to have this production of vegetables and other vegetables, especially lettuce and other leafy vegetables in the state, because what's happening is, according to FAO, we are around 8 billion people in the planet, and by 2050, we're gonna be more than 10 billion people in the planet and continuously growing. So we have to provide food for all the people who's going to be in this planet. So, but Florida is unique among the states because in the US, there are many plant hardiness zones, like you can see here in the map, that says what type of crop you can plant depending on the temperature that you have in your area. This is data that the USDA put together starting from 1976 to 2005. Florida is unique because here in Florida, we have so many different hardiness zones. That means that we can plant a variety of crops in all over the state. We go from having, from 10 to 15 degrees to 40 to 45, especially in the winter. As we see in the map, I hope you can see the different colors, and that indicates the difference in temperatures all over the state. Warmer areas in Miami-Dade and all the way up to the Panhandle where it's not too warm. In addition to that, the climate is changing. And as you can see here in this picture, what I bring to you is a graph that my collaborator, Richard Ray, put together in how many frosts we have seen in South Florida, started from the 30s to the 2010. So we have about average 9 of those frosts every year. And currently we don't have that many. So that tells us the climate is changing, and it's changing quite a lot. My program, the IFAS Lettuce Breeding Program, is actually a historical program in the world. In fact, it started back in the 50s with Dr. Victor Guzman, who was called the lettuce king by many because he produces many historical cultivars that are now used everywhere in the world where lettuce is improved and produced. Dr. Victor Guzman worked here in Florida for so many years, and he stopped to work when he was 104, recently passed away, but his legacy continues. For example, you can see here a lettuce called tall goose Maine, that the likelihood that you're eating that lettuce in your romaine lettuce is pretty high. It's understood that around 25% of the lettuce worldwide has in their background, in their genetics, this lettuce, because it has so many different good characteristics. Lettuce in the state is actually planted as a rotational crop. We don't plant it all the time, no all year long. It's planted right here in Palm Beach County, just south of the Lake Okeechobee. in an area that is called the Everglades Agricultural Area. It's a winter crop. We plant it from starting now from October, and we end our harvest in May. There are 10,000 acres that are in rotation with other vegetables and other crops. As you can see here in the picture, some of those are naming here. In this rich muck soil that is really dark and is very rich in organic matter. Lettuce is also planted now in greenhouse operations. They're trying to plant mostly all year. We have around 380 acres of greenhouse that we know so far. There might be more because newer operations are opening in the state in hydroponics, in aquaponics, and vertical farms. The picture down here is, in fact, is one of the farms in aquaponics that is up north in Hilliard, Florida. So all this makes lettuce Florida is the third largest producers of lettuce in the nation. After California and Arizona, we are third. So one of the consequences of climate change is that in the past, our season was started at the beginning of September and ended in June. But these days, that's not the situation. The season starts in September or October, basically, and ends sooner in May. So the crop is planted, as you can see, for whole lettuce production, like in the picture here. This picture here is one of the field operations in the Everglades agricultural area where growers are packing lettuce in those boxes. Other way to produce this crop is by producing baby leaf lettuce. As you can see here in the picture, all this is the lettuce that you find in your salad bag and those packages that you buy at the grocery store. So when we think about lettuce, what do we think? We think about something like this. I'm gonna launch a poll to you to see what type of lettuce you think it is. Please go ahead and answer that poll. So is you answer Boston, that's the right one. In fact, that's the one, that's how this lettuce is called. Let's go ahead and look at the other lettuce. When you see this lettuce, what do you think is this lettuce? It seems like you'll know this lettuce very well because that's right. That's a nice red lettuce. The next one lettuce in there, what do you think that will be? Great. Everybody think this is a romaine lettuce, and you're right about that. But when we look at this one, what lettuce do you think this is going to be? Good. You guys know a lot about lettuce, and that's good because this is a Latin lettuce type. This is what we think this is what we see when we think about lettuce. We don't think about this. For example, this is lettuce. Here in this slide, what I have is so many different diseases that the crop can have. Some of those we are working in my program trying to improve that lettuce against these diseases. Some of those are caused by bacteria. Some of those are caused by other microorganisms like specialized microorganisms called oomycetes or fungi. Today, I'm just going to talk about a couple of them just to show you what we're doing when, as we see that the climate is changing for lettuce production. So the first one is bacterial yeast spot. This is caused by a bacteria called Xanthomonas hortorans pathobarbitians, which is unique to lettuce. This pathovirus does not cause disease in any other plants, just in lettuce. We have three races, one, two, and three. What it means is race one is different than two and than three. So this disease is present in all lettuce production areas in the United States and all over the world as well. In Florida, the good thing for us is that we have it and it's only race one. In California, we have other races, races one and three, and in Canada, we have race two. But as the weather pattern changes, outbreaks are more frequent. Since the first outbreak in the 90s, we saw, or I will say, growers saw a significant outbreak back in 2010. And then we've seen lately other minor outbreaks that have been happening every year. Why is that? I think it's because, the weather is becoming more warmer and more humid, and bacteria loves that type of environments. The good thing is we had resistant to race one is found in Florida, and this ugly lettuce that you can see here that we are going to transfer by crossing this lettuce to our, most known lettuce cultivars that are either romaine or iceberg, and sometimes to baby leaf. We do not have resistant to race two. Sorry, we do have resistant to race two, but it's not found in Florida. And we do have resistant to race two, which is not found in Florida. It's found, in fact, in these wild types of lettuce. This is where as scientists believe that lettuce came from. So this is these most of these, when you wanna see them around, they look like weeds to you, but reality is they are highly related to lettuce and can be good sources of resistance. By crossing them, we can transfer the resistance from these wild types to the cultivated lettuce. One thing that I want you to keep in mind is that this bacteria attacks plants only, does not attack humans, because I get that question a lot. Is this is something that does any harm to humans, especially with outbreaks of E. coli? The other disease that we see these days is Cercospora leaf spot. This disease has been not studied much because it has not been a problem. It was already found in subtropical areas and pretty little. In Florida, it was formerly seen by in the fall. It's caused by a fungus that's called Cercospora longissima, and this is what the symptoms are: is brown spots with a white center, and the disease is favored these days by warm temperatures and moist conditions. As we move forward in life, we see this disease showing up more often because it's warmer, it's more humid in Florida, and now it's going to become an issue. So this year we decided with the plant pathologists to do research about this disease and understand if we can provide solution for growers about this disease that soon is going to become an issue. So lettuce, in fact, is one of those crops that is in the market all year long, because as I mentioned before, the two producer states are California and Arizona, and then comes Florida. Reality is, in California, there are so many valleys that are constantly producing lettuce, and all that lettuce comes from all the way from the west to here to the east coast. So in Yuma, as I mentioned before, previously our lettuce season was like this, longer. But these days, because the climate patterns are changing, our season is a lot shorter, as you can see here in the blue rectangle that I put there for you. The picture here represents what is Florida and its commodities. But more importantly, what I want you to see is how our soils are distributed all over the state. We mostly have sand in Florida. Some of the mud is around here, around the Lake Okeechobee, and then we have some clay soils and some coral soils in the north and the south. So one of the questions I had was, what else or how we can recover that lettuce season that we had lost, the one that it was in red that we don't have it anymore, especially because there are shortage of leafy vegetables all the time, even though some people believe it's not true. But in 2017, because again, because the climate is changing, it rained so much in California, in the whole West, after a drought period, that there were no lettuces or any leafy vegetables in the East Coast market. This is what represents this newspaper here from the Tampa Bay in 2017, that Floridians were feeling the crunch California green shortage. And that's one of the issues that we had these days. It's not always like this all the time, but it might happen. Then transportation cost. That lettuce travels five lettuce or any other vegetable travels for 5 days in big containers to get to all the way to the East Coast, and that represents expenses as well. And because that lettuce is for so long in there, there are some post-harvest concern. Usually, what we see in the grocery store is this lettuce with something called pinking, that is a post-harvest disorder that affects the look of lettuce. There are also food safety concerns. I put a table for you just to show you the last outbreaks of E. coli in lettuce and how many of those were in Florida. So the answer is zero. Most of them came from the West. As you can see, there are many states that get affected by one of those foodborne outbreaks when they happen. So my question was at that point was, can we plant lettuce in sandy soils? Because we had a lot of sandy soils that you saw in there. Can we recover that part of the season that we had lost? We were curious about that, and what we did was to put only 24 lettuces, 10 romaines, 10 icebergs, and 4 butterheads in muck soils and in sandy soils. Experiments were conducted in our area, in the West Palm Beach area. As you can see here, the experiment, this in sandy soils, we needed to do with transplants in Laxahatchee, while the experiment in Belglade, we didn't have to do transplants because basically, though normally lettuce is direct seeded. So the question, can we plant lettuce in sandy soil? The answer is yes. We saw that some specifically types like butterheads, leaf, and romaine lettuce can be planted in sandy soil. I mean, there's a lot of research still to do on whether this is going to be feasible, but we think there is an option for that, especially when growers are looking for alternative crops. In my last picture on that poll, I showed to you Latin lettuces. Latin lettuces are not commonly used in the US market because they're considered niche types. So we put some of those in that in northern Florida, in fact, where it's a little bit cooler than in our area, in an earlier plant, just to understand whether we can do this or not. One of the things that came to our mind was, we know that lettuce is very sensitive to temperatures, especially the night temperatures. We went ahead and we did a transplanting planted in Georgia, in Florida. And because here, in especially in the Belgrade area, will be too hot. So with the agents in the Trump County area in San John's, Putnam, and Flagler, we had these experiments. And as you can see here in this picture, in this graph in here, all the transplantings from Georgia, for the most part, did better. And that has to do with temperature. So when we planted very early, which is in the middle of the summer, in August 15, we didn't get much of yield. So a week later, basically 11 days later, as you can see, everything that is on yellow here produce some lettuce. So it's possible. The pictures here is what is showing you that Latin lettuce, that little lettuce here. This is the transplants that were produced in Florida, and this is the transplants that were produced in Georgia. As you can see here, those plants were to bud, went to flower, which is not good. In the second experiment, we got some bolting, but it wasn't that complicated as in the first one. That's just 11 days of difference. So heat tolerance is an issue, and is something that lettuce needs, especially because lettuce is a cool crop environment. It likes the cool weather. Thanks to Victor Guzman, the person that I introduced to you at the beginning of my presentation, adapted lettuce started from the 50s. Um, and now we had this Florida lettuce adapted to the Florida conditions, but still, the weather is changing, the climate is changing, and there is heat tolerance needed in the crop. So what happens when we plant in a warm environment, there are significant increases of yield losses due to warmer temperature. First, poor germination. Was an experiment we did on purpose at the very beginning of the season in a really warm environment, and we had a lot of lettuce that didn't germinate because lettuce doesn't like the high temperature. Plants bolt is basically showing the stem, and at that moment, they do not form head as the one you will buy at the grocery store. They become bitter. They are not good for consumption, and consumers don't like that. They also become more susceptible to disorders. I hope you can see here in the picture uh, this disorder here that is called tick-borne, that is somehow like a born of the lettuce head. Another one that shows up when the weather is too warm is dieback. This is a viral disease that affects the lettuce production in warmer environments. So first question was, when lettuce can germinate at higher temperatures. This is one of the things that we did with a high schooler intern in my program, Giselle Vasquez, who's now a biology major at the University of Florida. She came to us and wanted to do an internship and wanted to understand what we're going to be doing next. And we proposed to Giselle to germinate lettuce at different temperatures. Of course, 70 degrees Fahrenheit is what lettuce like, but 97 degrees Fahrenheit is what lettuce does not like. Giselle did several experiments in here and showing you just a selection of a few of these lettuces from the program that were germinated at these temperatures. So can lettuce germinate at higher temperature? Yes, in some cases. Perhaps we went too high. 97 degrees in the soil is probably not a reality, but we wanted to push those boundaries and understanding lettuce can be germinated at high temperature. Another thing that we did, in fact, recently we started this project to investigate if our lettuce can be planted in a really warm environment. Last year, no, last year, I would say last season, this year, we planted very late in early March and harvested in late April, right around the time when the pandemic was declared. Um, Several lettuces. Here you can see only the results of the romaine lettuce. This is just the weight of lettuce head and romaine lettuce cultivars. And what you have in your left in here is what produced best, and what you have all the way in your right was the things that did not produce much, especially because they were like this with so much bolting, tickbur, or like this iceberg here that did not form any head. So we think it's possible, and we're going to continue to provide and to improve lettuce for heat tolerance. So what's going to happen next in lettuce production? Four of those pictures are here in the state, not too far from us. If you're in the West Palm Beach area in Laxahatchee, or if you're in Broward in Davie, or in the north in Hilliard, or again in West Palm Beach, Lake Worth. Some of these farms are newer farms that are producing what we call in protected structures, because this is something that is going to happen next, especially considering that Florida, the state we live in, have really populated areas like the first one is in South Florida that comprises Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. And then the second one is the Tampa Bay. And then the third one is Orlando area and Jacksonville. So we love to live in the cities and we want to have access to fresh products. So one of the things that the University of Florida is doing is looking at how in the future we're going to be producing food, right? So this is an idea of the Dean of Research and Extension and creating the supporting emerging enterprise development integration teams that put together several researchers and several extension agents to provide solutions to Floridians for the next agricultural systems. One of those, which is not new, is more like what's gonna be, how that's gonna be produced, especially when we had to produce food all year long. And, the project has to do with producing in protected structures. So we had some research conducting hydroponics and aquaponics and in vertical farms. The pictures here are actually the first experiments that we conducted with the team of researchers. So our idea, in addition to this, is to improve several beneficial characteristics to humans. As humans, we are more demanding on what we eat, and we are looking on some of the vitamins that lettuce can provide to consumers. So some of those are, in aquaponics. These are some of the breeding lines of the program that are planted up in North Florida because the grower was having issues providing good quality lettuce because it was warmer and it was this lettuce was bolting, was having tick-borne and other disorders, and they were not able to commercialize lettuce. So one of the things that we do like to work is with the communities uh, around South Florida, and this is example of the Master Gardening Program in Broward County. I had a good luck to work with these wonderful extension agents that are participating with master gardeners and trying to provide food or train master gardeners in how to produce lettuce. All I do is to provide the seeds of those ones so they can understand if they can produce lettuce in these settings. So, but when we think about Florida, we think about this. Florida is beautiful, the beach, sunny day. It also is wonderful, and everybody thinks this is the land of eternal flip flops. Reality is, this is our reality in agriculture. We have so many storms, hurricanes, and many different things happening because the climate is changing. So while we have so many challenges and so little time, growers struggle with so many different reasons. You can see there a field of lettuce flooded because so much rain in the last weeks, or lettuce here in one of these urban farms bolted because it's very warm. In addition to all these climate concerns, we also have foodborne outbreaks. The picture is from the Washington Post. Yeah, and probably you can see, but they say overall, do not eat romaine lettuce. As I show it to you, the last outbreaks, none of them came from Florida, and I don't think any of those have ever come from Florida. But growers get hurt anyway because the announcement is general, and by the time they finally know where the outbreak comes from, it's too late, and they lose a lot of money because of that. So still, well, there are so many challenges in so little time. I think the crop is going to continue to be one of the top 10 vegetables in the US, especially in Florida. That lettuce is consumed by manatees, as you can see here in the picture. Um, Florida growers will continue to provide vegetables, lettuce, and other leafy vegetables as well. I think is good that we can thank them. We can say thank a farmer every time you see a farmer. Say thank you because they work hard and they had to face so many challenges. The breeding program will provide new cultivars adapted to new climate patterns and new production systems and all that. So the picture is one of the lines that we have in our program. From a master garden in the past class, in the class of 2020, who was able to produce this beautiful romaine lettuce from the UF IFAS breeding program. Also, Florida lettuce and other leafy vegetables are available to you in the winter time. So just, this is not a advertisement, but look for the label fresh from Florida because those vegetables are consumed right here in your state. So before I wrap it up, I just want to say that the University of Florida is everywhere, right here in your backyard. This is an aerial picture of the Everglades Research and Education Center where I work. It's right here in Belle Glade in Palm Beach County, where we have faculty, staff, and students, and we work on the best management practices to improve Floridian lives in so many different reasons. My job is to provide lettuce cultivars to be produced in Florida, but other researchers talk research on water management, soil conservation, and many different other topics. We also work closely with growers to solve their issues because we want to continue to provide science to the community. Next year, in 2021, we will celebrating 100 years. We hope to have an event. It's all going to depend on what's happening with the pandemic, but we hope we can do it. And while we had too little time, we also had too many, as you saw, pathogens and races and different weather patterns. In addition, in this climate change environment, we had newer production systems, and we need to continue to provide science that will fit the human race for decades to come. With that, I would like to thank you again for your participation today. And before we move into the final say thank you, I was hoping to find another poll, but I don't see it. I'm sorry. So, according to what I said before, what do you think about Florida? Is the first, the second, or the third largest lettuce producer? I think everybody's in agreement, most everybody. So some people say it was first, I wish, or second, I wish, but we are there. Thank you for your attention today, and now we can answer questions.
Herman, thank you so much. You gave us a truly fascinating talk, and I really appreciate you giving us your time and your expertise, and telling us a little bit more about what's going on with lettuce as our climate is changing. So we really appreciate that. For all our attendees, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat box and I will ask them on your behalf. For our first question comes from Myra, who asks, in your research, do you have to use any pesticides, or if so, what is the purpose of them within the research? And can you share a little bit of insight about that?
Sure. The answer to that question is, do we have to use pesticides? We always had to use pesticides to be able to produce lettuce. But one of my jobs is actually to improve lettuces for these stresses that are either diseases or insects. I didn't have the time to present all the diseases that we work on with the idea to reduce the number and the uses of pesticides. Thanks to breeding, um, growers these days have reduced the amount of chemicals they had to apply to produce a crop. In fact,
Our next question comes from Liam, who asks, when you decide that you want to study and improve lettuce, how do you know where to start?
that's a good question. So I think you need to first get a major in plant science, and then you can actually get a master in plant breeding these days. Soon at the University of Florida, we're going to be able to get a degree in plant breed, a PhD in plant breeding is almost ready to go. All the plant breeders at the university have worked together to put a whole program that is going to allow the university to provide a PhD in plant breeding. Not many universities can do that. And in fact, the University of Florida is one of the largest plant breeders faculty in the nation. We have over 30 faculty that work in plant breeding. And a lot of those, which that means is each faculty works in a different commodity. I'm the lettuce breeder, but we had a tomato breeder, strawberry breeder, blueberry breeder, etc., etc., etc.
Our next question comes from Olivia, who asks, why do we often see vegetables imported from other nations when Florida is such a big agricultural state?
That's Olivia. That's I think that's a fantastic question because as a consumers, one of the things that we like is to eat a lot and to eat cheaper, and to provide good quality vegetables. Sometimes growers have to spend a lot of resources and therefore, recover those resources. And sometimes other nations provide cheaper versions of that, and that's the reason why the market sometimes prefer that. That's one of the reasons. One other reason is, in fact, sometimes there are shortage of vegetables. Maybe there is a disease that affects the tomato production this year in Florida, and we don't have that tomato, so we had to get it from somewhere else. So those are the reasons. That's what I said. If you are here in Florida and see the fresh from Florida label, go ahead and pick it and buy it. Maybe because few cents more, maybe $1 more, but you're making sure that you are contributing to our economy.
Noah is curious if you're seeing similar changes to lettuce production in Arizona and California as we're seeing right here in Florida.
Right. So the answer to that is yes, especially because diseases. This first disease I talk about that it was the bacterial livestock. We with the University of Florida. Actually, I am the PI of a big grant to understand and to study and to provide solutions to growers all over the nation because the disease is everywhere. These changes are happening. In California, for example, there is a lot of heat tolerance work, water use efficiency work, because they are in constantly drought, right? There is salinity tolerance work because they are, draining the aquifers to provide irrigation to these crops. Now the seawater is getting into the aquifers and making this water salty, and therefore they had to provide lettuce that is adapted to salinity in the soils. So there are so many, it's everywhere. Everywhere is changing.
Interesting, very interesting. Emma is wondering, can produce imports from other countries transmit diseases to domestic crops?
The answer to that, I really doubt, because there are some requirements that are from the I can, it has to come from the Department of Agriculture that says that any product entering into the US has to have these specific standard qualities, right? One of those is make sure that there is no diseases in there that can get into here. So how these diseases travel? So reality is these microorganisms are pretty smart microorganisms. They move around. Just look at the example of COVID-19. So in Florida, in fact, there's something that I've always been curious. One of those is what are the real consequences of hurricanes in the long term? These big, massive amounts of water and rain and in air travels through the ocean, bringing so many different things. We don't see the effects right away because nobody had taken the time to understand that. But years later, we see there maybe there's a new pest, there's a new disease, there's a new weed, and we think it came with somebody, but reality it might come just with the weather.
So what about when it comes to other organisms? We know it doesn't impact humans, but what about other herbivores or animals?
Other what?
Herbivores or other animals that may be eating the lettuce?
hmm So as far as I know, there's no disease that affects that attacks the crop that indirectly attack uh, other, humans or animals. This is not always the case. There are crops where we know for sure. For example, one of those is corn. Corn is attacked by a fungus that is called Fusarium oxysporum 2 or Aspergillus. And those two produce toxins. One is called fumonisin and aflatoxins that indirectly, especially affect animals. As far as I know, and as far as I think the science community will agree on that, we don't have that case in lettuce yet. Doesn't mean that at some point it might happen, but none of those cases have been reported so far.
Sure. Sophia asks, do you predict climate changes and temperature elevation will cause growers to move operations indoors in Florida one day?
I think so, and I think it more like more than the climate pushing to that is how many people will live, for example, in the state. I was trying to look for the statistics because I recently hear how many people move every day to Florida, and we had to feed all that people. I think it's it's gonna be more of basically growing the other industry than rather replacing the field operations, because we still need to eat, we still need to produce. So that's how I see it.
Isabella is curious, does lettuce require a lot of water compared to other mainstay crops?
Let us, it does, compared to depends. So one of the things that scientists are working on is to basically improve lettuce for drought tolerance. As I mentioned before, in 2017 rained so much in the West, but 5 years and 6 years before that, there wasn't any water. So that pushed researchers to improve lettuce for drought tolerance. So these days, we know for sure what lettuce is more efficient to water. So we know, and this is going to be happening sometime soon, when researchers are going to be improving this lettuce to take less water.
Benjamin asks, is it easy for a backyard gardener to grow lettuce in Florida?
I think so. I think you need to attend one of the master gardener classes in maybe in Broward or Palm Beach and understand how that's done. I don't think that the crop is that complicated. Is on average you have 60 days you have a lettuce to consume. It doesn't take a long time either.
We have time for just a few more questions. Our next one comes from Charlotte, who asks, does the IFAS Research Education Center provide niche lettuce varieties to local businesses or restaurants?
No, we do not provide that. In fact, the growers provide lettuce to you as a consumers, to restaurants, to cruise ships, everywhere where lettuce is needed. Um, all we do is to research and to basically create new varieties. We create new forms. We improve the resistance to diseases, to pests. We want to improve the quantity of vitamins in lettuce as well, because as I said, consumers, we are more demanding. We want to eat better.
Absolutely. James is wondering, if I go to the grocery store and I want to buy something grown in Florida, will it typically be labeled, or how will I know the crop is local?
Yeah, that's something that I mentioned sort of at the end of my presentation. I think you need to look for the label that says fresh from Florida, and that for sure is grown here. And it tells you, I think it just, take the time, read the label, and it tells you where it's produced, where it comes from.
Ava mentions that you talked about in your presentation how temperatures are impacting some produce, like some lettuce can be bolted as a result of warmer temperatures. So what keeps you optimistic about Florida's food production future, knowing that temperatures are rising?
Because plant breeders like me, we've been able to just let. I'm trying to look for the best example to explain it to you. We've been able to have grapes that have seeds to grapes that do not have seeds. We've been able to improve tomato flavor. We've been able to have tomato that is little compared to bigger tomatoes. So all these things come because of plant breeding. So we've been able, if you are very familiar with plants, you might hear the name Norman Borlaug, who is the father of the Green Revolution, and thanks to him, all the wheat that was produced in Turkey, for example, that was able to save millions and millions of lives from famine.
And for our last question, I'm just curious from you, do you have any final thoughts you would like to leave our attendees with today? It may be something like, where can they go to learn more about the research that you're doing, or what can Floridians do to help the research that's being done at the IFAS location? Anything at all that you're interested in, and again, your final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, great. So if you want to understand more about what we do, we had a website at the Everglades Research and Education Center. I put my Twitter account in there, which is UF Lettuce. You can follow us in there as well. And just go to the university website and see what the people are doing to improve Floridians' lives. Um, yeah, that's basically that, and also being thankful for being here today. I wish it was face to face, but I think the internet works great for this, and I'm hoping that you all learn something today. And next time you see somebody in agriculture, especially a farmer, say thank you.
And what a great way to end our presentation today. Thank you so much for being with us again. We really, really do appreciate your time. At this point, we'll turn things over to Stephanie for some concluding remarks as we wrap up today's presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Well, that wraps up tonight's Climate Conscious Chats. It's so great to see the quality and the quantity of produce being grown right here in our own backyards. It's also reassuring to know that there's scientists like you that are looking to the future and also troubleshooting on what changes we need to make with the current climate change impacts. Thanks, Herman, for that. We really appreciate it. We'd love for you to follow us and learn more about some of the great programming running within the city of West Palm Beach and around Florida. And again, we thank you and good night.